Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra,
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people.
associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked.
and sometimes what didn't,
You will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts.
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode.
My guest today is Steven Puri, the founder of the Suka, that offers solutions to help individuals increase their productivity through being in a flow state. Steven was a senior executive at DreamWorks Pictures and 20th Century Fox, and who has successfully transitioned into the tech industry. He shares his career journey from producing computer graphics for movies like Independence Day to his ventures in the tech space, raising more than 21 million in venture capital. He discusses the importance of cross-domain learning, productivity, and achieving a flow state. Steven also delves into how his background in both film and tech has shaped his approach to managing remote and hybrid teams, emphasizing the significance of meaningful work and the right conditions for flow. He also introduces his company Suka, that has been built based on insights derived from various tools and techniques. This episode offers useful insights for leaders and individuals aiming to enhance their productivity and creativity. Listen on. Hi, Steven. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Hello. Hello, everyone listening.
I'm really curious when I first contacted your background, and I'm always a big believer in what we call cross-domain learning. That's where you probably get the breakthrough ideas. So having been in the entertainment industry and now doing some tech and focusing on individual productivity, before I get ahead of myself, let us start with your self-introduction, your career trajectory, and then we'll take it from there.
Shiv, that is so gracious of you. Okay, anyone listening in their cars or at home or at work or at the gym, let me tell you, this is what this episode will be about. I've been a senior executive at a couple of motion picture studios, DreamWorks Pictures, 20th Century Fox. I've also raised $21 million US of venture capital and have had 3 tech companies. One was a successful exit, 2 were failures. And a lot of what I do now is share the knowledge that I've learned about how to be productive in the modern world. I have a very strong thesis that we all have something great inside us. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? So I work very hard to help people focus, get into a flow state, do the great things which they're capable, because we all know there are enough really smart people working at huge companies like Meta and Twitter and TikTok to make sure that you don't do anything with your life. And I think that is criminal. I think it is one of the great crimes of this century. So my background is I started as the son of 2 engineers at IBM. My dad is from an area that is now Pakistan, but he, at the time, this is pre-partition, Multan was part of India, and then grew up largely in Dhariwal and went to Jalandhar, went to Assal and BHU and stuff like that. And then came to this country as a hardware engineer, did his graduate work at the University of Illinois. So my dad worked at IBM his entire career, has 74 patents to his name for chip design, logic chip designer, CPUs essentially. And my mom was from New York. She was French English by descent. They met at IBM in upstate New York because she was a systems programmer. She was a software engineer. So I'm the child of 2 engineers. And you know how it is. If your mom knows how to ice skate, you generally learn how to ice skate when you're little, right? So I got to learn how to code. I was a little code monkey. I would go down with my mom to like the computing center and she would be running her jobs and stuff. And she'd let me tag something into that. And I thought it was fascinating how you could get these like answers out or you could get graphics out, things like that. And that kind of launched my curiosity into what could be done with software engineering. Now, I went to Los Angeles for university. I went to the University of Southern California. And what was interesting is my life has been like a series of very lucky breaks, like lucky things fall into my lap, the movie Forrest Gump. And then I work very hard when I recognize one to make something of it, right? So I went to USC, obviously had an engineering background, but was studying liberal arts. And USC has a very strong cinema school, arguably the best in the world.
Okay.
So a lot of my friends in the dormitory were aspiring Steven Spielbergs and Lucases, and they want to make the next Star Wars and things like that, right? So you end up going out Tuesday night to the movies, talking with all your friends, watching movies and debating what's good about them. And I was in Los Angeles. Here's lucky break number one, when film became digital. So that whole rise of Pro Tools and the Avids and computer graphics that were making films, I happened to be there. And I lived in that intersection between I could speak to an engineer because I was one, and I could speak to a creative because a lot of my friends were, right? So my career took off. I produced the computer graphics for about 14 movies. Most notably, I produced the digital effects for Independence Day. We won the Academy Award for the visual effects on that. And my first company I set up with the director and producer of Independence Day because we got along very well. We really liked each other. And our goal was, hey, we spent $16 million on visual effects for Independence Day. Let's build a company to do that for ourselves and others. That was my first exit about 4 years later, a German conglomerate called Das Werk, which is like Liberty Media of Germany. They bought us out. It was a 6x return for us and our investors. Everyone was very happy. And, you know, I was in my 20s and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm so smart and I'm so good at this. All the things you believe when you're in your 20s, you're smarter and better looking than you are. And you're invincible and you can fly and stuff, right? So later we learned things are hard, but that was really interesting to me. So I took a little bit of time. And then here's the next sort of lucky thing is I thought I produced the digital part, the computer generated part of a number of movies. I've worked with a lot of big directors. I've worked with Cameron, Mel Gibson, David Fincher, Spielberg, Woody Allen, Jim Jarmusch, like all these guys, very talented guys. And I thought, how do I get to help produce the entire movie? Not just this little portion that's digital, right? And so I got onto that ladder and I started working my way up. I got on as an assistant, started building my network, reading all the scripts I could, worked my way up. And about 6 years later, I was at DreamWorks, eventually became an executive vice president. And I was with Kurtzman Orsi, based at DreamWorks. And then I got recruited to go to 20th Century Fox to run the Die Hard franchise, the Wolverine franchise, stuff like that. I did that for a couple of years. And then definitely had a moment of, wow, am I going to wake up, be like 40 or 50 years old, and be like, let's make Die Hard 9? It was not that inspiring because all the movies I was working on were just sequels. You were not particularly heroic. You were just the guy at the studio who makes the sequels, which from the outside seems very exciting. It seems very glamorous. You're going to premieres, you meet all these stars, you're working on set. But the reality is it's very similar to working in a soap factory. You're just making glamorous soap, you know, and here's what the summer soap smells like. Here's what the winter soap smells like. So I thought, how do I do something that might actually be slightly more meaningful? And the only other skill I had was engineering. So I thought, okay, I should start a small company. Let me find some problem that I care about and see how I can address it. And I did that twice, raised about 3 million for each of those. Both of those failed. And it was humbling. I was very embarrassed because a lot of my friends had seen me leave this position at the studio that was pretty well known. And then suddenly I've lost other people's money. I had to apologize to them, saying, I know we tried for this and we hoped this would be the outcome. It's not going to be. Well, you're going to lose your money. I lost $2/3 of my own money. And I was just like, ooh, and that hurt a lot. And so today, the thing that's interesting to me is in doing that, what I did see firsthand, especially with remote teams, were all of the challenges, all the distractions and how there were high performers who seemed to do an amazing job of moving their companies forward, having the companies that exited, having their companies that got acquired and things like that. And what they did was very similar to what great creative people did in film. And that's why I built the Suka, the happiness company, which is really about how do you get into a flow state and do your best work, block the distractions, and actually do the thing that turns into, I had the successful exit. I had the effect on the world, as opposed to do the thing that is, I spent the afternoon scrolling around in Facebook and I wasted my life. And as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about that. So that is how we got here today.
I think there's a lot to unpack, and also a lot of similarities, because in some things that I do, and also as part of the team I'm power, we also believe in what we call as the full stack leadership. If you want to manage outside, you need to first master inside. Yeah.
It seems so obvious, but most people don't think about that.
Yeah. But for that, some of the things that you mentioned about working in the creative industry, and you're also talking about remote teams or distributed teams. How have you been able to balance, or what the challenges of managing a creative team that is dispersed, where you probably need some discipline in terms of common processes, etc.?
Well, one of the things I thought was very interesting was I was running a startup when the pandemic happened, right? So for a lot of my employees, a lot of other companies and other verticals, it was a shock to the system. What is this thing where we can't see each other under fluorescent lights 10 hours a day, right? How does this work? We can't get together, we'll kill each other. And what I knew was that in film, which is, I know, an industry most people have not worked in. It's a very niche industry, right? But in film, remote and hybrid work have been part of the natural process of making a film for 100 years. Every film begins remote. It is writers working in their homes, working in their writing partner's living room, going to coffee shops. Hopefully one of their ideas gets some traction. And you have a little production office. You start to be hybrid, where it's, oh, we're there 2 days a week meeting with location scouts. Where should we shoot this? Production designers, what does this look like? Customers, what are they wearing? And then the rest of the time, everyone's out in the world doing their thing. The writers are doing rewrites, trying to get Brad Pitt, Amitabh Bachchan somewhere to be in the movie. And then you go into RTO. You're on set day and night for months on end. And then you go back to hybrid, you go back to remote. And through every stage of that, leaders have established ways of leading teams in remote, hybrid, RTO. And ICs, individual contributors, know how they contribute, know how they interface with each other and with their leadership, right? So that was a lot what I saw going into tech, which was in tech, it was like, we're so accustomed to just sitting here staring at each other all day long. How could it possibly work? The answer to your question, I just want to set the table a bit, but the answer to your question is, there are some principles that I love to share now that I can illustrate with examples from tech or film around how, as a leader, do you create the conditions precedent for your team to do great things, whether it's remote, which is a certain set of ways of working, or whether it's in office. And I'm not saying that everything needs to be remote anymore. Like, the pandemic's over. Remote is great for some things. In office is great for some things. But now as a leader, you get to choose. This feels like something we should do together. This feels like something we should do apart. And that, I think, becomes a conscious way to optimize your team. Back to you.
Yeah, you make it sound simple.
It's not simple, but it is joyful. When you let me give you an example, okay? So I've been part of a lot of creative brainstorms, whether it's in film, where Shiv, you and I are sitting around and we're like, the third act doesn't work. Let's think about it. Like, at the end of the second act, the hero has the sword and they have the bow of destiny, but the dragon's in the next cave. You're trying to do that thing. You're like, what should happen? Because the audiences don't like this ending. So you and I get two of our friends who are writers together, and we sit around in a little whiteboard office. We draw, like, it's incredibly energizing to feel each other in the room. I have never been part of a Zoom or a Google Meet around a creative brainstorm that has the same energy as you and I are just there, like writing stuff on notepads, drawing stuff on the whiteboard. It's amazing. I will always choose that over creative brainstorms that happen like this. However, what I have noticed, and this is true in tech as well as in film, is there are things that happen when someone is individual in their flow state that is different than the creative brainstorm. And that often is a remote kind of thing. It is where we have a problem with our onboarding funnel, right? And you turn to me and you go, Steven, I'm going to take Thursday and Friday. I'm going to be at home. I want to look at some of our competition, see what they do. I want to look out the window and just think about this for a while and get into a flow state and start designing, come back. And that is how I've seen the ideas happen, where you walk in on Monday into the staff meeting and say something, and everyone in the meeting just goes, we should do that right now. That changes the trajectory of our company. And I have not seen that a lot from sitting in the office on our little laptops, like banging away. It usually comes from that other activity of, I need to go be deep. I need to go deep inside and find that thing that is revolutionary. So both things are exciting.
Then I can relate to what you said when you're working as an individual contributor.
Yes.
I can probably find my time, my space, and then come back with re-energized new ideas and all that. But when it is a team that needs to do that, either because of the diverse inputs that you mentioned to a whiteboard and then trying to build on each other or trying to critique each other, etc.
Yes.
Or it could possibly be just that the work to be done requires that many people, and then we divvy up the work and then do things. So how does this play out in that kind of a scenario?
I think as a leader, you create the conditions for all the ICs. So let's talk about that first, right?
Yeah.
Suppose as a leader, you recognize there are different kinds of challenges in your business. Like we talked about, there is, hey, we all need to be together and creative and come up with a great idea for this thing, right? There's a challenge to the business. Let's all meditate on this, right? And do this together. And there are also things where it's like, you know what? Jennifer on my team is a great designer and she works best when she goes deep, right? When I'm not talking at her and expecting her to talk back all the time. So you as a leader, number one, need to recognize how to lead individual people. They respond differently and they do different things, right? It's just, if you have a team of athletes, you can ask the track and field runner to be a pole vaulter and maybe they do an okay job. But if you ask the pole vaulter to be a pole vaulter, they're going to do a better job. Okay. So that said, as a leader, you can say, okay, there are some conditions around brainstorming, right, or collaborative work that I can set. And by doing this, I'm going to get a better result. It's just if you're growing a plant, this amount of water, this amount of light, this amount of nutrients, these are the conditions that allow me to grow the best corn or whatever, right? So for example, I've been part of a lot of creative brainstorms. It is true. One of the things that I noticed, and this shocked me when I was a young development executive in film, the creatives I worked with that were the most precious about their ideas were the mediocre ones. And I remember the first time when I was at DreamWorks, I was in a development meeting with Steven and Steven, Stacy, and some writers and some exec. It was like probably 10 of us around the table. And I'm in a meeting with Steven Spielberg, right? I'm sitting at his conference table in his little office. And it's a thrilling thing of, wow, I've made it this far in my life, right? I'm executive vice president, this production company at the studio and the thing, right? And I'll change the details, but I'll tell you something that happened where I saw in this meeting, we were talking about something that an alien would do in a movie, right? There's a movie we're developing and there's something that had to happen. And Steven suggested something. I'm going to say, the alien should come through the wall. Then everyone looks up and from the tables and this, right? And of course, Steven has said this. So everyone writes it down. Alien comes through wall, right? Of course. Not 3 minutes later, practically the coffee guy comes in and he overhears this and he says something. He goes, actually, I felt we saw that in this other alien movie. And maybe this is like a more interesting twist on it that I haven't seen before. And without a hesitation, Steven said, oh yeah, we should do that. And in many meetings, it would be like, oh my God, someone contradicted Steven Spielberg. He's going to be fired. He's going to be shown off the lot right now. There was no ego to it. It was simply, what's the best idea? I don't care whose idea it is. This is my idea. If your idea is better, we should do that. And to create conditions where that feels possible, that's a huge part. Even if you're dealing with user interface elements, user flows, whatever it is, that feeling of, hey, here's an idea, but I'd love for you to have a better one because what I want is the team to win. I don't want to win. I want the team. I want our company to have a great thing. So you can do that, and that's creating the conditions for that. Now I'll tell you a different one, which is on that solo side. And have you done an episode on flow states before? I don't think I've heard one.
Not exactly.
Not specifically, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This might be helpful. Would you like to talk about that? Because I think it might be helpful for the audience. Yes? Okay. So let me set the table for 60. Sorry?
Yeah. We've had a couple of guests who have talked about this.
I've talked a little bit. All right. Flow states. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, Hungarian-American psychologist, he named it. He wrote a seminal book called Flow. His thesis was high performers seem to get into these concentrated states where they do the most amazing work of their life, the life that moves the world forward and all that. And after studying athletes, inventors, artists, he said, I'm going to call this book Flow because I think there is something about the metaphor I like, which is you can get on the river and paddle and move forward. But if you align yourself with the river, it carries you forward. It magnifies your efforts. So that is something that I'm going to touch upon here, which is, suppose I do as a leader say, Shiv, you know what? There is a part of our day where our team should get into flow and do deep work, which is not producing the TPS report. It's not stapling stuff together. It's not like returning emails and the shallow work, as Cal Newport would say. It's actually doing that thing where it may yield something surprising and deep. That can only happen if I, as a leader, agree with the team. We need to keep this time sacred because to get into flow takes between 15 and 23 minutes, it seems, right? Most research shows. And then if you get interrupted, it takes you another 15 or 23 to get back into that state. So if I, as a leader, say, Shiv, what if the whole team from 9 to 11 every morning, we all agree, no Slacks, no team messages, no meetings set, no quick Zooms. That's the time we will do deep work, right?
Mm.
That is a way to set a condition precedent where you tell the team, hey, you know what? Each of us has something big to contribute. Do that thinking here. And in the afternoon, we'll do Zooms, we'll do customer meetings, we'll do the usual kind of stuff that goes by, but that usually doesn't move the company forward. That just handles the daily kind of grind, right?
Yeah.
And in doing this, something that's implicit in it, but I want to hang a lantern on it, which is, as I get to know you, Shiv, as we work together, there is a concept of chronotype, which is at what time of day are you best at what?
Yeah.
And as I start to understand that, working in San Francisco, there is a lot, or there historically has been a lot of the best development, the best engineering happens in the middle of the night. And there have been fads around, we have to all microdose psilocybin or LSD, or we have to do whatever to get into that coding flow state, whatever that may work for you. But as it turns out, it's not for every engineer staying up until 4 in the morning coding. For some people, it's the clarity of the morning. And I'll give you an example from film. There's a famous screenwriter named Ron Bass. He wrote My Best Friend's Wedding and Rain Man and a bunch of stuff, right? He told his family, I will not talk to you in the morning. Like, he doesn't even say hello to his wife. He doesn't say good morning to his kids, right? He said, listen, this is the deal. When I talk to you, I can't hear my characters anymore. So when I wake up, I have to write my dialogue for my scripts. So I'm not going to make pancakes for you. I'm not going to ask you if you did your homework. You have to understand this. This is my chronotype, is I have between 5 and 9 in the morning to do that kind of work. And his family, of course, is like, Dad, you're making $2 million a script. We can make our own pancakes. We're okay. We're good. And he wrote the roles that you get Julia Roberts, Tom Cruise, Dustin Hoffman, like these huge movie stars, to say, of the 50 things offered to me, I want to do this character. This is what I want to do, because he understood he could write the dialogue that they're like, that's what I want. These words I can have great role performance with. So anyway, I know it's a whole mouthful of stuff, but those are the kind of things I think are important, both with remote and in-person work.
Yeah. I usually tell people that at least have 3 buckets. One is the me time, which is very important that we keep ignoring.
Yep.
That there's no distraction, no disturbance. And then you have a team time and probably time
Yep.
to rest.
Yeah.
Here, when you're constrained to work in a distributed environment, how do you really include the remote members?
Let us say this, is that when you're leading any team, remote or in person or hybrid, there are a couple of things that will trip you up no matter which one you're doing. What is the framework? And sometimes you hear this thing about like Jamie Dimon, the chairman of JP Morgan Chase, like everyone has to be back in the office. I can't see, I don't know what you're doing. There's an element of, if you are a strong leader, you have two really big things to do. You can set budgets, you can hire and do things like that. But number one, you establish a mission. Hey, we're here to cure cancer. We're here to change the environment. We're here to do this thing. And number two, you set a culture. You express to people, this is how we treat each other. This is how we treat our customers. This is how we treat our competitors. And if you have trouble with the idea of remote or hybrid teams and what are people doing, you have to ask yourself, is that actually a hiring problem? Because let me tell you this, if Shiv, I hire you onto my team and we're set out to cure cancer and your dad died of cancer, I can be pretty certain that when you're at home, you're working on curing cancer. You're not windsurfing and like stealing money. You know what I mean? And that's good hiring. That's finding people who are aligned with what you want to do because they will naturally do it. If your incentives are in line, you don't really need contracts. You naturally want to do the same thing. And I think that's important even between companies. So when you talk about the challenge of doing this, of the culture of these teams, yes, even with a remote team, you can't just have a daily stand-up. Hey, let's all talk about what we did yesterday, what we're doing today. We're on block today. Yes, you can do that just to stay in sync, but there are also human things that you need to do. And not every company can get together and do quarterly retreats where they go do trust falls from trees and do, ropes courses and stuff. But to find ways where you do get to know each other, even if it's just encouraging people to have individual coffees. Like one company where I was a couple of years ago, we found that to be really fun. We had an automated bot in Slack that just encouraged, this week, Steven, you and Raj should have a coffee for an hour. And just, you can't talk about work. Just talk about, I'm going to have a baby in November. I'm super excited to talk about that. If you guys and I got together, you would learn a lot about me from how do I feel about having a baby in November, right? And how life will change. And those sort of things do create a human culture. So I think that's really important because not every remote team, I think what you're implying is not every remote team can get together and do meetups and group retreats.
Yeah. It's wonderful. But then we also see the rise of this whole gig working.
Oh, gig working.
Yeah.
Gig. Okay. Sorry. I thought you were saying Git working or something. I was like, in GitHub?
No, it's just one task that I need to do. I'll do that. I get paid. And then that's it. I'll wait for the next assignment, something like that.
Yeah. And you know what? There are some people, you remember it was only like a week or two ago, there was that guy who got caught working for 4 companies at the same time. And he was very unapologetic. He's just, I'm trying to make money from everybody. If you hire him and you haven't done your research, that's a problem with you. You're a bad leader. You're a bad manager, right? But people who want gig work, they should work at companies that are doing stupid stuff. Hey, we're just running a delivery service for food. Okay, great. Are you changing the world? No, you're just delivering. You know what I mean? It's like if you were trying to create the robots that are going to colonize Mars, probably you're going to attract different people than the gig workers who are like, yeah, I'll write a little code to optimize the delivery routes for delivering lunch.
Yeah. So after working with all these diverse remote teams, being the creative, and then having your own 3 startups and all that, what was the trigger for Suka?
You know what? I saw how people that were moving their life forward, that were building the companies that got acquired or got exited, they had very similar habits to, in film, the writers, the directors that were making $100, $200 million movies. And I'll give you some examples of that. We talked about understanding your chronotype. Also, there's a great value in knowing how to harness that flow state, that time when you do something meaningful, because that's really what is like the jet propulsion of getting ahead of everyone. Everyone can return their emails. They can do inbox zero. Everyone can return their Slacks. Everyone can return customer calls. But to do the thing that really moves it forward, so I became very focused on how do we create a flow state app? Because Mahai has written brilliant stuff on this. But there are like a dozen people who've written really smart stuff. This is not a new problem. If you read James Clear and Cal Newport and your AL and you go down the list. So I simply thought this. I thought, not everyone's going to read the top 12 books on this, but everyone needs the tools that are in here. And they all agree. Each book has a different word for things because they need to sell you their book and their framework, right? Here's my acronym for smart working or whatever, right? Smart goals. So I just thought, what if you took all these tools and put them behind one play button? What if I could open a website each morning and there was a play button? When I played it, it gave me a lot of access to these tools very inexpensively, very easily. And I wanted to solve problems that I have. I can, if you want, I can tell you some real problems that I have working. One is I procrastinate. I get overwhelmed. I procrastinate. I found I do this in the morning a lot. So for example, tomorrow morning, I'll tell you, oh, Shiv, at 9 a.m., I'm going to begin work on this thing. Tomorrow morning at 9:15, I'm still returning emails from the inbox or I'm scrolling through the news, just stay on top of what's happening, whatever. It's BS. I'm procrastinating. And when I peeled back the layers of the onion, why am I procrastinating? Like, why does this routinely happen? I found that it usually came down to overwhelm. What kind of overwhelm? And it would be, my task list is so overwhelming, the number of things on it, that I don't know how to get started. I don't know where to start. And my ADD brain wants to like jump around and it's hard to see all that. Or there's something on the list that's just so large. I think I can't make a dent in that. But you know what? I can't write my book this morning, so I even start. And what that turns into is the 6 p.m. where I feel like I'm terrible. I'm an idiot. I didn't get my work done. I have to get up early tomorrow to finish today's work. And I hated that cycle. I hated feeling down on myself at the end of the day. And I hated that sense of just, oh, tomorrow I'll get up early and finish today's work. And then tomorrow night, I tell myself the same lie. And then Wednesday morning, I tell myself, that cycle of dominoes where you just don't finish. So this is what I built, is a really simple smart assistant that greets you in the morning. Hey, Shiv, looked at your task list. It seems like these 3 are the most high priority. Do you agree? You can say yes or no, or change it. Say, actually, I do need to write this report, whatever. And then as soon as you hit play, it only shows you those 3. It hides the other 14 things on your task list. You can focus on those 3 and it's less overwhelming. And it helps me feel like, oh, this is achievable. Because once you start doing one and that's done, the momentum builds. And it just works strangely with your brain. Since we did this, the members of the Suka community are 77% more likely to finish all 3 tasks than before, when you could see 17 and they would finish 2 with some partially finished stuff. So those, I think, are really important. Like music's really important. Do you listen to music at all when you work?
Yeah.
What do you listen to?
Depends on my moods.
But give me an example.
For instance, if I'm into problem solving,
Yeah.
I probably like some soft instrumental music in the background.
Yeah.
But if I'm wanting to think about new ideas, do something else, maybe it is again soft rock, not too harsh.
Sure.
And then if I just want to relax, it's more of Carnatic music. It varies.
It varies. Okay. So having read a lot of the research on this and about flow states, there's a bunch of research that points to like the middle of the road, like flow music is usually 60 to 90 beats per minute, certain key signatures, non-vocal, ambient, melodic sort of thing. There's lo-fi music. There's binaural beats when you have a slightly offset right and left channel, things like that stimulate delta or gamma brainwaves. And happily, I have a bunch of friends who are film composers who wrote over 1,000 hours of music to these specs for us, right? So we created all these playlists, upbeat, down-tempo, lo-fi, binaural, that. And I'll tell you a funny thing is, in our community, a number of people said, oh, actually, I miss coffee shops. Like maybe I have a child now, so I don't go and write in coffee shops anymore. We found a recording of a coffee shop in Vienna, Austria, where you just can listen to the espresso make the espresso, the coffee being served. And we put that up as a playlist just as an experiment. I do a lot of experiments with our community. We have a group chat, and Tony and I will say, oh, hey, we're playing with this feature. What do you think? And it's awesome to build in public this way and get immediate feedback. So we launched this playlist. People love the coffee shop. So now we have playlists for rain in the Himalayas. One of our audio engineers was in Kathmandu and recorded 2 hours of rain one day. So we just called it Himalayan Dream Rain. You can listen to hours of rain in Himalayas. There's a stream in Japan we recorded, a lake in Canada called Emerald Lake with little birds, and you can hear the lapping of the water. There's surf in Cyprus. So again, like you said, both for you, where you have different music you use at different times, as well as for different people who generally want different things. We wanted to give people that opportunity to say, let me create an oral by oral, AU oral environment in which I can block out the world, because I'm passionate about if you fall victim to just scrolling in one of these apps that is brilliantly designed, brilliantly engineered, right? It is the cost of your life. Facebook, Instagram may be free. They're not free. The price is your life. And you end up that old grumpy guy who's, oh, I could have done something with my life. I could have had $1 billion company, but instead I double tapped and I liked some stuff on Instagram. And I think that's criminal. I think it's as bad as getting cancer from cigarettes.
Yeah. Now, based on your experience with the community, are there specific professions that benefit more?
Oh, it's interesting. In our community, because I've gotten to know a lot of them, the three biggest professions are developers, engineers, designers, whether graphic designers or UI UX, and writers, like bloggers, copywriters, things like that. And what I noticed is we really attract people who generally work from home. They work remotely. And there are a lot of distractions when you do that. And they have knowledge work to do. There are a few hours a day that they need to focus and say, I need to write this great code or create this great design element, this UI piece, or I need to write my blog every day. So we have a number of people in there that publish, oh, here's my blog post for the day, or here's my thing. And that I think is a beautiful thing. I love the way we have a community of people who are high performers who want to do something great and they support each other. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever told you this. The way we came about having a community was we started with a single player game, right? It's essentially, hey, here are the tools for flow. You can use these. And I would speak to a lot of individual members in a hub and spoke way, but none of the members knew each other. And I thought to myself, would it be interesting for the people who come here? Because I know so many of them and they're very common. Like they're not slackers. These are people who are going to have the big exits in the world. These are people who are going to be the known writers. These are people who are the great designers, but they don't know each other here. Would be interesting for them to know each other. So I pitched this idea, and one member, she said to me, she's still a member. She said, what are you considering? I said, I worry that maybe this will be a distraction. That maybe people will view having a group chat, any sense of each other as, well, it takes me away from focus. Now it's just a chat app and it's terrible. And I worry if we launch this, that will happen. And she said this to me. She said, listen, I can go to the Nike store and I can buy a pair of running shoes, right? They will sell me a left shoe and a right shoe. I can go running. It works great. But there are 100 million people who belong to the Nike Run Club. And the reason for that is together, you run further, you run faster. Your friends hold you up the days you feel lazy. And the day your friend needs you to encourage them, it feels great to be the one to be like, come on, Shiv, let's do this. She's like, you should do it. Can I tell you, it's my favorite feature in Suka now. Just the fact there are people there who support each other and post what they're working on. And I think that's really powerful, that even if you're remote, you can be part of a community of people who are all doing something great.
So is this assistance to getting into a flow state or staying in a flow state more through the app, or are there other practices also that go with it?
Yeah, with Suka, you get task list. So you can prioritize what you're doing. You can see metrics on what you're doing. You get a productivity graph. So you can watch and see. You get points when you are focused. You lose points when you open your phone while you're working, or you open Facebook while you're working. And you can learn day over day, week over week. Am I getting better? Am I improving? And if you're not, what is it you could do better? You can time box. Like every time you create a task, you set an amount of time. And I'm telling you, it's very weird. The principle around when you time box, you tell yourself, I have 35 minutes for this. You magically get it done in 35 minutes. Your brain kind of says, okay, I can't screw around. So we apply a lot of those principles, as well as showing you a Pomodoro timer, which you can customize so that you do take healthy breaks. Like it's really important that you do stand up every now and then and go for a walk or drink some water or stretch at your desk, things like that. So those we think are really key. And you get points for that. If you on your break go for a walk, you get 15 points. You should take care of yourself. This is not about, I worked all day and all night and I'm dead and I have nothing left to give my family. I have nothing left to give myself. That's not what I believe.
We talk about this hybrid ways of working, or in the larger companies, even if they are in the same campus, they are probably in different buildings, or even if they're in the same building, probably different floors. And the only occasions they get to even meet each other are very rare.
Yes.
Immediately water cooler or maybe lunch table, etc. But to be in flow, they all need to work in sync as well. It's not only about the individual flow. The other aspect, maybe I'll just say this, while this focuses on the individual, how do you get a team into flow?
You as a leader can give the possibility of doing that together, right? But flow is a very individual activity. So what we talked about earlier is if you are serious about, I want the benefits on my team of them going into a flow state and having great ideas and developing great things, you need to do a couple things. You need to set aside time when no one interrupts each other. You need to have focus time, flow time, and that's sacred. There's no meeting in the middle of the focus time. So that's something that you have to do as a leader. You have to say, hey, we're serious about this. You also have to give people a sense of meaning. If you read what Mihai wrote, he said, it's interesting whether you're talking to Michael Jordan or you're talking to Picasso, there are a couple of things that seem very common. They have to have skills that apply. It's not Michael Jordan painting. It's not Picasso playing basketball. They have to be challenged. It's not stapling papers together. It is doing something at the edge of your ability, right? You have to believe it's meaningful. And if you've hired people, like we were talking about before, if we're curing cancer, that is our goal, and I hire people who are passionate about curing cancer, the work is meaningful. If I hire gig workers to cure cancer, it's not meaningful. They're not going to get into flow because there's not that deep connection to the work. These sort of things I think are very important.
Yeah, maybe let me rephrase my question. Since you mentioned Michael Jordan. Yeah, Jordan needs to be in flow in a game.
Yes.
His teammates as well.
You would hope you can encourage that. Yes.
At the same time, during the game, so that the team can win.
Yes.
So any thoughts on how you synchronize the flows of individuals to align to maybe one, not the same chronotype, but at least be in sync on the clock?
I think you do that by saying, hey, in our team or in our organization, here's the time that we're going to set aside for that work. And again, you need to know your team. If I know my entire team is better in the afternoon at coding or something, or the writers are better in the morning, you hopefully as a good leader know this, right? So if everyone's tired in the afternoon, you don't say, now's our flow time when all of us are going to block out 3 to 5 p.m. and be in flow, right? No, you're going to say, hey, you know what? Let's do it 9 to 11. Like, for example, in our company, that's what we do, right? And that sense of we're doing something great and we're doing it together, but we're not interacting. It's not like I'm continually slacking. Oh, Shiv, I have an idea. What about this? What about that? Did you do this? Can you give me that? That's not flow. That can come after your flow time. And you go, hey, Shiv, you know what? While we were in our focus time this morning, I had this idea for our retention campaign. And I developed it to this point. I'd love to share it with you. And then you can do synchronous work and share it. And hopefully out of that brainstorm, you improve the idea that I had, or you just love what I have done. You're like, absolutely, we should run with that. But the result is you have to have that interplay on the team. So when you talk about like the Chicago Bulls, which were an amazing team in the 1990s, right? There's a sense of Michael Jordan was a star player, right? He had his thing going on, and he has a great quote about when I'm in the zone, it's just me and the ball. He's not talking about teammates. He's not talking about the scoreboard or spectator. It's just there are moments when the entire world is reduced down to this amazing thing with me and the ball. But there's also what he did because he had those couple key teammates with him, Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen and stuff, that they coordinated and they almost got into flow together. And I think that really comes from doing it together. If you and I know that every morning we both think deeply for an hour, and then afterwards we compare notes. You say, oh, Steven, I had this idea for the onboarding. And I say, oh, I was working on the drip campaign. Let me show you that. That can be very healthy. But you can't really do interactive flow time because that's brainstorming. That's different.
Yeah, I didn't realize how long we've been talking.
It's been great, though. Time flies by.
One question. How do you define, or what would be your tip for a leader to be in flow? So far, I've been talking about a lot of things about individual performers or specialists, and then ultimately, but when a leader.
For a leader, the best thing that I can suggest is be aware that before minute 1, you've done most of your work. And by that, I mean, if you declare, you know what, team, we're going to try this thing from 9 to 11 in the morning, doing deep work, doing the work that moves the world forward, right? Before 9 a.m. at 8:59, your work is done. Because hopefully what you've done is you've given people something meaningful to work on. Shiv, I need you to figure out our onboarding funnel. It's leaky, right? You have prioritized for them. You don't have to think about jumping around, Shiv. Do I work in this, do I work in that? You have a clear mission. It is something that you believe in, you find is meaningful. You time box it. Hey, Shiv, we're not doing this all day. We're not going to be in flow for 19 hours. We have 2 hours and at 11 a.m. Why don't we get together and why don't you present to the group? What do you come up with? Which could be nothing. There's some days nothing comes out of the fountain. And there are other days the fountain spews gold. So you as a leader, your work is done at 8:59. It's like being a great coach. You're not on the track running. That's the moment where you let go, and hopefully your work before the track shows up.
That's wonderful. That's very similar to, as I mentioned earlier before the conversation, that what we do also. Iceberg, if you need to get things done above the water, there's a lot of work that has to happen under the water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. On that note, thanks a lot, Steven, for sharing the whole idea of flow and then how anybody can use it. And then
This was awesome to be here. And by the way, let me just offer this. If anyone is listening and there's something I said they wanted to know more about, what can I read by Cal Newport? What's that book you mentioned by the Hungarian guy? My email address is very public. You're welcome to email me. It is Steven@thesuka, which is TheSukha.co. Email me what it is. It doesn't have to be related to my company. Anything you want to learn that'll help you, I will email you back. I get back to everyone in 24 hours unless I'm traveling or sick. So I'll get back to you. It will not be a long email, the story of my life, but it will be, here's a blog post by Cal Newport that really talks about monotasking or something. And it's available to anyone listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, definitely. We'll include that in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. Okay. Bye, everyone.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.